The wilderness was colder than usual that winter. Clara had been living in these mountains for decades, a woman who had come to understand the rhythm of nature, the way the trees swayed in the wind, the cry of the wolves at dusk, and the peaceful stillness of the snow-covered landscape. But nothing had prepared her for what she was about to find in the depths of the forest. It was early morning when Clara first heard the sound, a soft, desperate whimper that echoed in the stillness. It wasn't the call of a wolf or any other animal she recognized. This cry was different. It carried with it a sense of pain, fear, and desperation. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She had always trusted her instincts when it came to the woods, and something told her this wasn't just an ordinary animal in distress. Following the sound through the thick trees, Clara's breath fogging in the air, she finally found the source of the cry. Her eyes widened in shock as she stepped into a small clearing and saw what was causing the noise. Three tiny bear cubs lay huddled together, their small bodies shivering from the cold. Their fur was matted with snow, and their eyes, wide and full of fear, locked onto Clara as she approached. The cubs were barely alive. It was clear they had been abandoned, left to fend for themselves in the harsh, unforgiving winter. The absence of the mother bear was immediately apparent. These three cubs, too young to survive on their own, had no one to protect them. Clara's heart sank. She knew the wilderness could be merciless, but seeing these fragile creatures, alone and helpless, was almost too much to bear. They weren't just hungry or cold. They were orphaned, and their chances of survival in the wild were slim. Clara understood this all too well. She had seen animals struggle in the wild, but this was different. These were defenseless babies with no one to help them but her. The decision was immediate, yet heavy. Clara had spent her life here, isolated from the world, understanding the delicate balance between humans and nature. But helping these cubs meant more than just feeding them. It meant risking her safety. Wild animals could be unpredictable, especially in the winter when food was scarce and survival was a daily struggle. The mother bear could still be nearby, desperate to protect her cubs. Or perhaps she was lost, gone forever, leaving the cubs to face the world alone. But Clara couldn't turn away. She had never been one to shy away from a challenge, and these cubs needed her. They couldn't survive out here without a mother, and Clara wasn't about to let them die alone in the cold. Carefully, Clara approached the cubs. She could feel their fear, but she didn't back away. Instead, she whispered softly, trying to calm them, her voice steady despite the growing uncertainty in her chest. Slowly, she scooped the first cub into her arms, its tiny body shaking in her embrace. She could feel the cold seeping through her coat, but she ignored it. The cub was the priority. She wrapped it up tightly in the warmth of her jacket and turned to gather the other two. It took all of her strength to carry the three cubs back to her small cabin. They were light in her arms, but their weight, both physical and emotional, was immense. Clara's heart raced with every step, the path back home seeming endless, each footfall sinking deeper into the snow. She didn't know how long they had been abandoned, but she feared it had been too long. Her hands were frozen, but the thought of those tiny lives kept her moving. She had to get them to safety. She had to save them. By the time Clara reached her cabin, the sky had begun to darken. The fire in the hearth was dying, but she didn't stop to stoke it. She gently laid the cubs down on a pile of blankets by the fire, making sure they were as warm as she could manage. They were weak, but there was a flicker of life in their eyes. Clara knew the journey wasn't over, though. She had to feed them, tend to their wounds, and keep them warm. The bears were powerful creatures, but these cubs were just babies. They needed more than just shelter. They needed love, care, and time to heal. As the night grew colder, Clara watched over them, her thoughts a mixture of fear and hope. The cubs' breathing steadied, but Clara couldn't help but wonder, what would happen next? Could she really save them? Would they survive long enough to return to the wild? Days passed. Clara did everything she could to help the cubs. She fed them what little food she had left in her cabin, made sure they stayed warm, and watched as they slowly regained their strength. It was a delicate balance between care and caution. She had always been alone in the wilderness, and taking care of three bear cubs was no small feat. But something about these creatures stirred a deep sense of connection inside her. She couldn't explain it, how she had come to care for them so quickly, but they were hers to protect now. She would not let them die. The cubs grew stronger with each passing day. They began to move more freely, and their cries became less frequent. Clara smiled at the progress. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. One day, they would have to return to the wild. That was their home, after all. But the thought of letting them go was painful. Clara had become their guardian, and they had become part of her world. But then, something unexpected happened. One evening, Clara was sitting by the fire, sewing a patch on her worn-out coat, when she heard a rustling outside. At first, she thought it was the wind, but then the sound grew louder, and something told her it wasn't the wind. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the still air. Clara's heart stopped. Could it be? Could it be their mother? The door to the cabin creaked open, and there, standing in the doorway, was a massive bear. A mother bear, her fur thick and matted with snow. Her eyes locked onto Clara's not with aggression, but with something else, recognition. The cubs, now much stronger, had sensed the presence of their mother. They rushed to the door, their tiny bodies bounding toward her. The mother bear didn't hesitate. She moved toward them, nuzzling each one with her snout as they circled her, their cries of joy filling the cabin. Clara stood still, watching this reunion unfold before her eyes. Then, the mother bear did something that left Clara speechless. She turned slowly toward Clara, her massive head bowing, as if in gratitude. It was a rare, vulnerable moment, a silent thank you for saving her cubs. Clara, her heart swelling with emotion, took a slow step forward, her hand outstretched toward the bear. The mother bear watched her for a moment longer, then gently nudged her hand with her nose. It was an unmistakable gesture, a bond formed in the wild where survival depended on trust, not fear. Clara felt a tear slip down her cheek as she gently patted the bear's head. This was not just a thank you. It was something deeper. The bear was showing her trust, showing her that the kindness she had shown to her cubs had been returned. And with that, the mother bear, her cubs in tow, turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Clara with a sense of peace she had never known before. She had saved their lives, and in return, they had shown her something far more valuable. That in the wilderness, sometimes kindness could transcend the boundaries of fear, and trust could form even in the wildest of hearts.